everybody. Welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today we are live. I don't even really know what I'm doing. We're not live, but we're in a group of people who are on the same camera. And you know, I've never done that before. So this is going to be a new experience for all of us. But this is my friend Mark French, who has just completed his 48 state adventure.
I'm about to complete it.
But you're here.
I'm in North Dakota. I'm about 2 weeks shy of being completely done.
Okay. So I'm gonna say you're done because you're in North Dakota.
Okay.
His journey will be complete in 2 weeks. And his friends, Suzanne and Bob, who happened to walk into the coffee shop to meet Mark and have some conversation with Mark. And so we thought, why not just record all of this? So I would like to start by asking you've been on my podcast before, so this is not new, but tell us what you're up to. What is this crazy adventure you've been up to?
15 months of traveling our country. Meeting America up close and personal is how I really think about it. I was getting stale at the house, and I said I needed something more in life. And in 1982, I read a book called A Walk Across America. A guy named Peter Jenkins and his dog Cooper walked across the Appalachian with the intent of doing the entire country, and his dog got killed, long story short. But anyway, I couldn't sit the book down because I was so inspired, and I thought, before I get too old or die, I need to do my big or something big. And it just so happened in 2023, everything fell into place perfectly, and I thought, now's the time. And I bought that vehicle because of its name.
What's his name?
It's called the Dodge Journey.
Yeah. Okay.
And I felt it was appropriate. Converted it into a camper van and hit the road. And I wasn't interested in the big cities, the tourist traps necessarily. I was interested in real America from my perspective. And just going out there and seeing if what I see on TV and social media lines up with our America, and I'm finding it to be completely different.
Yeah, the last time we talked, it was either right before or right after the election. Do you remember? And you were in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And I think you had just been there, and you were talking about how this was a swing state and how it was going to be really important how they voted. And you said, I imagined on the election day that there was going to be a lot of animosity with people, and you said it was a completely different.
Yeah. So, and Suzanne knows, our classmate Mark Illishammer called me. I was about 30 miles outside of Philly, and he says, "Where you at?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, you're in the thick of it." And I lose track of days. I lose track of days, and I calibrate it by seeing church parking lots fill up on a Sunday, so I know it's Sunday. But he calls me and he goes, "Where you at?" I told him, and you're in the thick of it. And I'm like, "The thick of what?" And it's election day. It's election Tuesday and all this. And the TV, it's got these sides going back and forth and angst and whatever. I said, "That's interesting." I said, "I've been in the state for 6 days. I've met over 100 people." And I said, "You on the phone are the first person to mention politics." That opened my eyes, because I thought what he was seeing back home, I wasn't experiencing anywhere in the entire state. And it just so happened to be, at that time. So that was when my eyes were really opened up to maybe everything we see is not really what it is.
That's a really great lesson for everybody, for all of us, to think media has a job. I started my career in journalism, so I have this purist hope for journalism to be, truthful and ethical. And there's a job to be done when money gets involved. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it feels sometimes like we don't do what we really want to do, our real selves, because somebody else is telling us what we should do. And I love that you mentioned that.
And I think that the thing for me, and it's not me saying that what's being shared is untrue,
right,
as much as it is they're not sharing the big picture. So when you can give a snapshot of what might be happening in Philadelphia during election, they make it sound as though it's representing the entire state, and it's not.
So you guys, you were a teacher, and you were an English major, and eventually became an attorney. This is what I've just learned about you too. So I know you know Mark, And I'd love you to be able to ask any questions you have of him or share any insights you have about what you're recognizing and watching on his journey.
I think one of the coolest things that I have found following him is he has seen so many people. I mean, so many people that I'll never know, but so many people that I did know or knew of that he went and visited and stayed with, and, you know, all over the country from Grafton, you know, and that was so fun, like Danny Lab. And I still call him Danny.
Yeah.
I can't call him Dan, but I thought that was really.
I called him Dan.
You did. Oh, I didn't. I can't. Yeah. And I told Bob, because I was just telling him, you know, I didn't probably know you until 7th grade when we went, because we went to different elementary schools.
Okay.
And then I said, in 7th grade, I remember you hung out with the Gillishammer boys, and, you know, and then you just mentioned Mark, and I don't know. So seeing all the stuff around the country is cool, but to me, seeing the people that you saw was my favorite.
Yeah.
So
your Grafton peeps kind of dispersed a bit. You had a chance to reconnect with them, and through him, you had a chance to reconnect with those people.
Just to kind of not creep on it, you know, but
Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not
I know.
kind of creep on it. I just thought it was cool. I just thought it was interesting, and then David Gosted, you know, all the stuff he's done for you is really neat. Another classmate, and there's so many.
He wouldn't let me pay for these.
Nice.
Just gave me the
Glasses.
And there's some stories.
It's who you know. It's who you know,
Yeah,
people. It's who you know.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you said about people. So I often even don't know where former Graftonites are. It's the followers that are reading this, and they say, hey, you're close to so-and-so, and this is where so-and-so lives. And they were getting in contact. Next thing you know, we're in contact, and I'm staying there. And
That's so
Yeah.
I'll just give you a great example in Michigan. The Basher family.
Yeah.
So Karen Basher heard about my thing through someone else, and then she gets on there, and next thing you know, I'm being contacted, and I haven't seen her in 50 years.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was just walking into a family room, totally, you know, you're just made to feel, but it's so fun to connect.
Mhm.
And you have all that history and the stories. And then we come to find out that her father and my father, toward the end of my dad's life, were fishing at Lake of the Woods all the time. You know, so it's a small world. And, and I suppose I'm going to have to become a Detroit Red Wings fan, because they did give me a Detroit Red Wings jersey.
You do what you have to do, right? So speaking of that, just to segue a little bit, talk to me about Bully Brew and why we're here in Bully Brew.
So this right here, when I left, I had, I think I brought 8 bags of Bully Brew ground coffee. They had already been ground. And I thought that was going to be enough for the entire trip. Not even close. And so I thought, I'm going to reach out to Sandy. Now, Sandy, the owner of Bully Brew, grew up in Grafton. Her father, it was Earl Olson, who was the
shoe store.
Took care of the courthouse. And her brother's name was Mike. And so I reached out to her and I said, Sandy, I said, I love your coffee and I love what you guys stand for. And I said, you know, if you'd be willing to help me out and send me care packages, you know, I would. And because I think I was already writing, hey, I'm drinking Bully Brew, and so we just made it a point to So I think as of today, I've probably received 30 bags of ground coffee. She gave me a grinder, obviously the mugs. So every morning in that vehicle, and you might want to take a picture.
We might have to do that later. We'll show you the vehicle.
I have a full-size coffee pot. I prepare it the night before, so I hit the button in the morning. I don't leave the vehicle until that pot's gone.
All right.
It's my opportunity to just be relaxed, savor some good coffee, and prepare for the day, for whatever that's like. So yeah, it's been a fantastic. So as part of my thank you to her and the Bully Brew Company, I'm visiting all of the locations throughout North Dakota and Minnesota. I've already done the 4 in Minnesota in the last couple of days. So yeah,
this is your first one in North Dakota.
This is my first stop in North Dakota at Bully Brew.
That's so great. That's so awesome.
One question I had
Yeah.
for you is, how did you determine where you were going to go, or kind of what the itinerary was going to be?
Yeah, I really didn't. I got rid of a lot of things. I got rid of a lot of my material possessions. I've only got a few things that you could probably fit in the closet in storage. And my daughter lived down by Tennessee. And I figured, you know what, the only goal I really set at the beginning is I want to stay off the interstates as much as possible and take the back roads. And so I figured I'm going to take a couple, 3-4 days to drive down to Tennessee and get a feel for the back road, because I knew it could take longer. And I was in no hurry. And that's how it went, and that's how it's continued. I don't have any plans. I have no schedule. I have no deadlines. I have no stress because of that. I wake up in the morning, Bob, and I let the weather dictate the direction I'm going. Unless it's, if someone reached out to me, and said, hey, are you coming this direction? That would be as close as I get to making a plan. Yeah, I can stop in there tomorrow or, something. But I typically don't know. I have no idea, for example, where I'm going this afternoon.
Oh.
I have no clue. I'll figure it out as I go. And that's part of the fun for me. And I really don't want to know what's around the next corner. I want that surprise. And I want that, wow, oh, I didn't expect that. And that's happened so many times.
Still, you still feel that way after 15 months of this.
Oh, every day I'm going to have a hard time just stopping when it's over. But when it's done, I do know what I'll do. I'll trade this or give it to my daughter or something, and I'll get myself into a Sprinter van, and I'm going to go find a quiet place on the mountainside to write my book.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I need to be away from everything then.
Yeah.
So the mountains where,
Not yet.
Yeah.
I have about 5
near
areas that I've been by. My mother's in a nursing home,
Yeah.
so I'll try to keep it fairly close. I could end up in Montana. That was absolutely stunning. And again, more classmates or close classmates, the Russums, Sherry Russum,
Oh, yeah.
and Vonda
Johnson. Yeah.
Johnson.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, you mentioned when you came in today that you've been following him for quite a while, and you said something about, I can't remember how you said, I love his writing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's really good. I mean, it's like eloquent, I would say, and just really great writing. Like, how did you learn to be a good writer? In Grafton? I mean, that must just be something you have, You do write like you're thinking it?
So what I've found is I don't text a lot. I don't type a lot. I speak it.
Okay.
So it's as though I'm a storytelling.
Yep.
And so when I can tell a story in voice,
Yep.
it comes out the way I want it. Instead of
Okay.
trying to think of the
Yep.
words, it just comes out how I would. And that helps. It's like anything else. When you don't have a lot of background in it, you English folks know, it can be a struggle. So you learn as you go.
Yeah.
And
So like when
I
you
get
were in
encouraged.
school, did you like to write or didn't you hate at school? Okay.
And same thing with speaking. You would never get me up in front of and now I've spoken at Iowa State University and other places where the audience doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
I'm not the
So
best
when
at
you-
it, but I enjoy it.
When you do your book, will you use some of the stuff you've written already and just plug it in and
Yeah, so
and
that's my notes and my archives. So every day when I post, that's the intent is
Yeah.
not only do I capture it for the moment, get to share it, but I have that archive.
Yep.
So not only in words, but also in photographs.
right? That's what I
Yeah.
was just gonna ask because your photos are amazing as well.
I appreciate
You
it.
know.
Yeah.
So what's the name of the book?
Denise Demers had Sandy, I guess is her name now.
Yeah.
Been for probably 40 years. But she had a name for you.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
there's been quite a few thrown out.
I'm sure.
I think it's going to be one of those things where at the end of the day, it's just going to, it aligns. And
Yeah.
I don't know. The first one she threw out there was notes from a native North Dakotan or something like, or travel notes from a native or nomadic notes, but I don't want it to be, I want it to be a book that maybe grabs intentions of all demographics, because I don't want to write it just for like people that are considering nomadic travel, or I want it to, at the end of the day, I would love to have a book that someone, even if it's just one person, says, because of what you did, I'm doing mine.
Whatever mine is.
The way I was inspired by a book, I would love that to be the end of it. So it won't be a picture book.
Okay.
I think I'm going to try to weave the story of America through my eyes in it. However that might come out.
Yeah.
When you started this 15 months ago and you had, like, your question, Bob, was, did you know where you were going? Did you know what you were doing? And you didn't. To me, that takes a lot of trust in your own intuition and your own guidance, whatever that might be. Were you always intuitive, or were you always listening to something? Or
I've always been adventurous. I've always been one who, Mark Delishammer told me one time, he goes, one thing about you is, he said, you get your mindset on something, you always complete it. You always do it. You do it 100%. And when I set off on this, I think the first 2 weeks, it took to, okay, you're a little apprehensive. You're not sure. There's some uncertainty. How do you, I didn't even know what boondocking was. And then you sleep in your first Walmart parking lot, and then you sleep in, your first rest area, and they're safe. And I would say after 2 weeks, I never gave it another thought. There's a comfort level, and your intuition is built along as you go. So you start to perceive things. I pull into a rest area. There's 5 other people doing the same thing as me. It's community. I'm comfortable, and they will tell you the same thing. So yeah, I just I would say after 2 weeks, I had no reservations whatsoever, and I still don't to this day.
I think that's a lesson that I'm hearing, and what I'd like to do is tap into the trust rather than the fear. Like, I was raised, bless my mother's soul, I was raised by a mom whose persona was beware of everything. People are out to get you. You have to watch your back all the time. And being raised that way, I can see how the first 2 weeks are like, what's going to happen? Who's going to get me? But if we could tap into that space and that energy that we give off that says, I trust you and I want to be in your space and present. I think you told me earlier, you had people who came to you and told you their stories. You had some great stories.
I'm going to tell you one now that I might even get emotional talking about it. If you follow, I use the word blessing a lot. And this wasn't a blessing to me. So I was at I just got to Illinois and found this little camp place, and it was a government place, $5 a night. You're out along a river, small. And I'm there, and I have a fire going, and I see this pickup and this guy driving by, and he'd go slow to this direction, and then 10 minutes later he'd come back, and then 45 minutes later he'd go by, and this happened like 6-7 times. Well, finally I thought, oh, I wonder if this is the ranger, whoever it is, that's supposed to come and get my $5, and type of thing. So when I saw it coming back this last time, I walked out towards the road, and I put my hand up like to stop so I could find out. And this gentleman thought I waved him in to the campground. So next thing you know, he's backing up and he's pulling into my campsite. And this gentleman gets out of his vehicle, and obviously I won't mention his name, but I could tell he'd had a few beverages ahead of time, and he sits down, shakes my hand, hey, thank you so much for inviting me into the camp with you and all this. And we got, and then I'm smelling it.
Yeah.
But so we started talking a little bit, and I said, well, how's it going, and what's your name and all this stuff. And he was telling me that, I work for a John Deere dealership. I'm in the parts and all this stuff, and it's just small talk.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I said, I'm curious now. I said, I watched you drive back and forth. So what were you doing? He says, I was looking for a place to shoot myself. Wow. And he put his hand up like this. And I said, what? He goes, yeah. And he said, the pistol's on my seat in the vehicle. And he said, but then you called me in. And at that point, I wasn't going to say, no, I didn't, and I was like, oh, so that's when my listening hat came on and the open-ended questions. I just needed him to talk.
Mhm.
You know, what's going on in life, you know, and well, my wife's divorced, you know, everything that you can think of bad, you know, we're in financial and I have a little daughter that I'm not, you know, and so he was going through serious depression and whatnot. And I had Bully Brew Coffee on, so I was able to offer him some coffee and I'm sobered up a little bit. And he was there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And by the time he left, because I was apprehensive, there was a part of me saying, you don't need to drive, you know, but I think he'd sobered up enough by then. And but when he left, he said, you know, when I was driving by here, I was pretty much going to kill myself because I don't want to do that now.
Wow.
So, you know, in the back of your mind. So the rest of the night, I can remember myself thinking, I don't want to hear shots.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't. And 2 days later, I'm still curious. So I knew where he was. I knew it was in the parts, and I called and he answered the phone.
Oh.
And I just said, I'm sorry, I think I had the wrong number. Because I
Mm.
didn't want, you know,
Mhm.
that to me is that you have to sit back and ask yourself, what, why me? Why this? And yeah, so I've had those stories.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me about their children. I think I told you that one last time, you know, getting murdered. And how do you deal with that as a parent and what it does to you in your life? And of course, not all the stories are like that. Some are fantastic. You know, some can't be shared.
Right, right.
You know.
But you never, the cool part about this, I think, and back to your question, was you didn't intend to have these things happen. You were open to the possibilities of what could be shown to you. And then the impact you made on the people who you were open enough to, you said, put my listening hat on. And I'm sure you learned things you would have never learned if you would have come in with an agenda.
Right.
Because sometimes we're so agenda driven.
Yeah, I think everyone is. I
right?
mean, most people. You know, it's like, oh.
But you did have an agenda at least to try to visit every state?
Yeah.
So that was my agenda. I'm doing the lower 48. I'd been to Hawaii before. It wasn't the 50 for me. It's become the 50 now for one reason only. Because there's an app online and it's people documenting, hey, I've done all 50 states. Darn it, North Dakota is almost always the
I know
last
it.
state.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that want to, when I travel this state, because I'm going to spend a couple weeks doing North Dakota, I want to try to change that perception and get that out there in my little small way.
Yeah.
But Alaska for me is not going to be part of this road trip. It's going to be, you did this, now
Yeah.
give yourself a vacation.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you get to fly up there maybe.
Right.
Fly, whatever.
Take the train.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Yeah.
train would be good.
I just got back from a train trip.
Oh, you did?
So
Where did you go?
you don't want to hear this again, listeners, but I went from Fargo to Seattle
Oh, cool.
and took a sleeper car and
Yeah.
made my way out and
Nice.
back. And so it was really fun. I would do
Yeah.
that again on a sleeper car,
Yeah.
not a coach the whole way.
But you've been on the road for 15 months.
15 months and 3 days today. I am 300 miles shy of 57,000 miles.
Wow.
And like I shared before, Bob, I think what keeps it so fresh for me is I don't know what tomorrow brings. So I try not to look to any tomorrows and just enjoy everything in the moment. Even if it's raining outside, that might be my excuse to sit inside and catch up on my posts or whatever it might be. One of the things that I think has been valuable for me is I'm an extrovert, more so than I am an introvert. I like my introverted time, but I'm an extrovert and I'm open. I have no problem engaging anybody. I don't care who you are, where you're at. I'll talk to you. And sometimes all it takes is, hey, how are you today? You know, something simple, and it opens a broader conversation, and that's where you meet America, the real folks of America. And wow, I
There's so many stories, I'm sure.
I can't wait to actually myself to have the time to go back to the very beginning and read every post and see perhaps if I've grown in this area or that area.
And all Well, for one, the Planet Fitness people, the
Yeah.
people who work there, you always,
Yeah.
you know, often have their photos on, and it's
Yeah.
so fun to see
It'll be there
around the
tonight too.
country. Oh, it's so
Because I
great.
went to Fargo's
Oh.
Planet Fitness
Yeah,
first thing this morning.
Oh, nice.
it's a new big one.
Yeah, it's a
Mm.
huge. I
Yeah,
thought I
right.
heard him say it's the largest one.
Yeah, I haven't been in it, but I've been by it. It's huge. It's nice. So,
Yeah.
So if you were wondering, listeners, that's how Mark can take a shower and do the things he needs to do to refresh himself. And do you do workouts too then when you do that?
Every once in a while, but I'm limited because of a pinched nerve in my back,
Ah.
and it's been really bad the last month and a half, especially in the mornings.
Mhm.
So I typically go there, and then I get on the hydro massage bed at the end of it, which kind of helps a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you will find that a Planet Fitness almost everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And in the absence of a Planet, well, east of the Mississippi, they're everywhere. West of the Mississippi, especially once you get into the mountains and beyond, not so much.
Mm.
Then it's different types of gyms that are more
Mhm.
available. But in absence of Planet Fitness, I've showered and bathed in lakes,
Mm.
rivers, under waterfall.
Wow.
It's wherever a rest area, give you sun spun, you do what you can.
Yeah.
And it's me in there alone. So if I'm not going to visit someone or whatever it might be, I'll wear the same clothes 2-3 days in a row. And
Mhm.
you know, I mean, I got disinfectant wipes to keep clean
Mhm.
and whatnot, but I don't need the comforts of a home or an apartment or whatever. And I think that would probably be the most challenging thing for many is not having those comforts.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to them. I mean,
Mhm.
when I lived in the apartment or the house, it was, I have a shower every day and
What would you do with your meals?
I make most of my own. So I have a dual burner propane stove. I have a 31-liter fridge in there. So on the top of my vehicle is a solar panel that would normally go on the house. It's 400 watts, and it powers a power station. It gives me 2,000 watt hours of electricity. I get 4 110 outlets, 4 USB outlets, a C port. So it handles all those needs. Keeps my fridge going. Provide power to the coffee pot, which is my most important asset. You know, I eat like everybody else would. I mean, I'll make my vegetables, I'll make meat that stays in the fridge. You know, where I don't is I love McDonald's breakfasts.
So does Bob.
I'm in McDonald's breakfast. Even today, when I got here, I had to hit McDonald's before 10:30, and thank goodness for the app and that
Yeah.
app.
Oh, you're just like Bob that way
That
too.
app has saved me so much money on the road.
You get freebies.
Yeah. And then once a month, I try to treat myself, sometimes twice, to like a better meal. Like I might pull into an Applebee's or something for, you know, just so I don't cook that night. But
Yeah.
it's kind of that, all right, I want a steak. You know, I've made my own steaks and
Wow.
yeah. Many folks. You'd send me, here you go. You're taking this with
Yeah.
us. So I just left my cousins and I have 3 bean hot dish. I have, you know, some
Nice.
desserts and so you have all that. I'm surprised that I haven't put on. I've actually lost about 15 pounds
Wow.
since I started. But I'm also more active.
Mhm.
My ride is designed such that it'll give me a good night's sleep and I can feel refreshed in the morning, but not so comfortable that I want to spend all day in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be something that would be more akin if you were driving a bigger RV or
Right.
something and it's hot outside.
Mhm.
How many miles do you typically carry in a day? Cover.
It depends. And I stopped looking at it by day because I'm not driving every single day. There's times I might be at a campground for 3 days or classmates. I showed up at Wayne Michalek's house. I said, yeah, can I spend the night? He goes, no, you're spending the week.
Aw.
Yeah,
You know,
that was
thing.
really fun following that. And he seems to have a really nice wife
Oh,
and nice family
Beautiful. Check
Yeah.
this out. You'll love
and
this.
nice house.
You'll love this church. So this was right after you and I did the last podcast.
Okay.
I get there and Wayne and I now we're classmates. We were born the same day. We hung out throughout and then they all went to Texas after high school. So Wayne and his wife had a son and named him Justin. And I remember commenting, I said, well, that's my grandfather's name. Beautiful name. And then Justin's holding this baby, right? This little toddler. And he goes, yeah, and this is my son. And I named him Colson. And I was like, that's my grandpa's full name, Justin Colson.
Goodness.
You wrote that.
Wow.
I was like,
remember
ah,
reading
and all of our jaws just kind of,
that. Wow.
you know, because we had known it. So it's the little things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I facilitate a group studying, it's called the Enlightened Leadership Lab, by the way, everyone who knows about that, you can check us out, enlightenedleadershiplab.com. But we are studying a book called Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski. I'm not sure as an attorney if you know Leon Jaworski, certainly.
Yes.
So Leon's son, Joseph, wrote this book called Synchronicity, The Inner Work of Leadership. And we are studying it now in my Monday group. And it's all about those random synchronicities that you find when you open your mind to them. And things will just start showing up, like Justin Colson. I mean, it's,
Sure.
but if you weren't looking for them, we would miss them.
We would miss it.
And you're probably seeing a lot of things, as I said about intuition earlier, and maybe it's intuition, whatever you might call it, but opening your eyes to possibility, I think, is another way of looking at that. And if we do that, I just, it's so amazing to hear your stories, because the guy who was going to kill himself, the people you have run into in Pennsylvania, you know, the stories you share, I just don't think we notice that when we're so busy and we're looking for division instead of connection, it seems.
Perception I have that it seems like this, everybody's in the country's in a hurry.
Yeah.
You really notice it on the roads.
Mhm.
Speed limits, they're just mere suggestions. and that's everywhere. So, and you know, to be fair, if it's a 55 mile an hour, I'm like maybe 58. I get that. Many of us will do that. But out there, if you're going 58, you're more than likely to be the cause of the accident because everybody else going 65. So everybody seems to, I've said that many times. Why is everybody in such a hurry? You know, to get to what? What's so important? And yeah, couple of thoughts that just come to mind, and I may have shared this with you. I know I shared this with you on the last podcast. Get to versus habit to. So what I found about myself is things that would be frustrating or cause angst. I was sitting at a rest area in Maryland, top of Chesapeake Bay, and thinking to myself, I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, which was on the bottom. And the choices I had were you either drive all the way around Chesapeake, come in through the backside on the Chesapeake Bay, which is going to add 4 or 5 hours to the trip, or you cut through Baltimore, DC, and Washington, which is basically one big city. And there's a part of me that I just want to stay away from the big city. So I heard myself saying at this rest area, oh, I have to do this. And I realized how negative that sounded. And it's a play on words. And I just said, well, what if I get to? And it was like immediate. I get to do this. And I remember driving through there. There was no white knuckling. I'm noticing structures in Washington, D.C. that I would never have noticed. I'm looking at, you know, the Baltimore stuff as I'm going, like the ballpark. And I was like, this is so, next thing you know, I'm at the thing. And where that's really served me is every time that there's been something that could be frustrating to others. For example, Nevada, hour and a half stop for construction on a black asphalt highway in the middle of the desert, 110 degrees outside. And, you know, my first thought was, you know, or else you got to run your HC. And I turned around and I said, oh, I get to sit here. So I took my camera out. I was walking out in the desert. I was looking for snakes to photograph, and I had water with me. And so I made the most of it. And it was just an attitude switch. And that's enabled me to get through anything really that could be frustrating or cause some angst.
Right. Well, here's the interesting thing to think about. You are the only person who's going to be there for you on this journey, right?
True.
You're the only person that will never leave or lose you, right? And so you have to be pretty self-reliant, and you have to get to that point where Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you know, you're giving us examples of how that was.
Yeah, that's very true. Perfect statement. I don't even know everything or how I feel or the emotions or all the learnings
Mm.
so far. I think that much of that's going to come
Mm-hmm.
when I look back and read and reflect. I haven't given myself a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
So at nights when I'm in my vehicle, I'm writing my post, finishing up, and at the end of the day, I typically just turn on some good music and you know, let that put me to bed or whatnot. And I figured the rest of it will just come later.
How do you know when the journey ends?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So yeah, because I would have told you at the beginning that when I finish the lower 48, that's when it'll be over. And I think that's just the ending of this chapter. So when I get to our hometown of Grafton, North Dakota, at least the Cow Park, because that's where I started, that'll be the end of this chapter. But I can't see myself stopping this type of lifestyle. I've met too many cool people, and there's something about the freedom of being untethered from everything. With these phones now,
Yeah.
your banking, everything that you need to do, you can be done on there. So I don't have to be rooted on a foundation anywhere.
Didn't you create a calendar remotely?
I did, yes. And then I had our
I have,
classmate.
Yeah, I have one. I
calendar
have one.
hanging.
I have one too.
So I have two of them with me that if you want to figure out some way to get them to some of your podcast
Okay.
listeners,
All right. We've got
and
it.
they're signed, so you'll
Nice.
figure out something.
Okay.
And be able to put them in the.
That's great.
It was just my way of doing something that others could have, you know, without having to spend a ton of money on a print. At least you can have some of the photographs, and those were from the first half of my trip.
But you did that all remotely. I mean, your
Everything.
friend was the printer.
Yep.
And
In Grafton.
You
right?
could,
Right,
yeah, you sent
Yeah,
all the
'cause I
files,
went-
everything electronically, and I didn't have to go there at all. He didn't, you know,
Cool.
and sent it back
Yep.
and look at the proofs, and
he sent them to you somewhere along your journey, and you picked them up, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, they because well, they did a couple of things. They sold them right there in the Grafton Record. I sold them on my website, and then I also said send me 30 of them at the time that I can give to folks that I meet.
Yeah.
And the ones that didn't sell, I had them send those to me too. So now I sign those and give them to where
Perfect.
I stay or whatever
Perfect.
it might be. And, you know, one of the things we talked about a little bit too, and you read the story, and so I still remember this because you made the comment, you go, Mark, I had no idea that went on when you were younger. My Dakota Boys Ranch story. So
I know. It's like I was right there. I didn't know.
yeah, I did a pretty good job of keeping that under wraps. You know, when you're that age going through it, you see it more as a negative. The best thing that ever happened to me was being sent, and we call it sent. Today they call it, they were referred
Right.
to this because it's more therapeutic, and I think it was seen more as a punitive type of thing back then. But I'm so thankful that I was sent there at a early age because they allowed me to see the path I was going down and also the options to a better life. And, you know, you don't make everything perfect once you're out of there and whatnot. You don't even think about the value of that stay while you're living it or even in your younger days yet. But it has been so beneficial to me long term. You know, I call it my fork in the road.
Right.
And I refer back to it all the time, you know, in terms of which road you're going to take. And so I've been, for the longest time, we were doing monthly Zoom calls with the kids who are currently there, the students. And as I traveled across the state a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, I stopped in, they gave me a tour, and now I will be going there next week. And it sounds like I have a speaking engagement with students and possibly doing a photography class with. So it's my way of giving back a little bit. And, you know, we've tried to raise a little money on this side, and I think we're just at a bad time because people are holding on to, and I get it, you know, it's tough economically for a lot of folks that, so that, yeah, that's been a fun.
It sounds, there's a metaphor in here, Bob, don't you think, about taking the path when you were young and how this set you on a different road, and now that's what you get to do with your whole life. Just take whichever path you choose.
Yeah. I feel a freedom probably unlike most.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I answer to myself,
Mm.
if you will, and I don't mean that selfishly. You know,
I hear that differently, Mark. I hear a freedom from things, but a freedom to. We
Yeah.
usually think of freedom to do things, but there's a freedom from the heaviness of the shoulds, maybe. Like you should do this. Somebody
The
said you
schedule.
should.
The-
Yeah, the
the-
schedule, the
the-
agenda.
the-
Yeah.
so that's how I say it. I say I have no schedule, no plans, and no deadlines, so I have no stress.
Yeah.
That's,
And
Mm.
that's
that makes me
very-
jealous.
Yeah.
Not that I should have that much stress at this point, but
And
It's-
you
there's a
feel it.
discipline. There's also a
Yeah.
discipline that goes with it. You know, I don't have buku bucks in my pocket, you know, so I'm on a budget. And I if I can see at the end of, because I'm pretty accurate as or pretty good about saying I'm going to stay pretty close to this.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to go over a few times,
Mhm.
obviously, but I have this thing where I say I have more with less.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is if I had an abundance, I think I would be doing this type of thing, flying to locations, staying in hotels and seeing the things that are touristy around me, versus what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I have more. I feel like I'm a richer person because of the fact that I don't have all that excess. And so therefore, you know, it's wherever that thing can get me to,
Yeah.
that's where I'll go. And I see hidden gems off the beaten path.
Mm-hmm.
You go into a small town the size of Grafton, North Dakota, and you find the local cafe where you go in and have coffee with the locals, and they're the ones you got to go see this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how you find it. But don't tell the world. A great example of that. A great example of that is in Ely, Nevada. So, you know, most people, I can't speak for everybody, but you know, I always thought of Nevada as Las Vegas and Reno.
Yep.
That's what you know, and I would have said vice, debauchery, and all that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
did visit them, and they're a lot cleaner than I anticipated. But I thought, oh, I'm not just going to take that road up. I'm going to go through the entire center of the state. So I get to Ely, Nevada, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, the whole drive there is desert, surrounded by mountains. And then you pull into this place and it's kind of set down in the mountains. And I remember telling this lady at the laundromat, some of my best conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure at the laundromat.
And I remember telling her, I said, you guys have a goal. It's so your surroundings and and I said, you need to get this. Oh, hell, heck no. We don't want to become the tourist trap. And I thought, wow, man, I am so thankful that I had this opportunity. Yeah. And I went into a gift shop. So on the front of on my windshield there, I've got this thing of the United States, a little metal thing. It says God bless America. And the lady I bought it from, we started talking and I said, well, you know, I said, you don't sound like you're from Nevada. She goes, no, I moved here from Minnesota.
Oh, no.
And then she goes, check this out. She goes, I'm from Ely, Minnesota.
Oh, you're kidding.
So no, it's Ely to Ely. And I said, how cool is that? So that's why I had to go to Ely.
Yeah.
I had to say, okay, I've been to your place there and whatnot. And that's the type of stuff that I'll hear something like that. You made a comment to me in your comments. My husband, Bob, was from.
Yep.
Right?
Well, you said you're in Wausau,
Wisconsin Rapids. And I was in Wausau.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's all I needed to hear. I'm going to Wisconsin Rapids.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then you get there and sure enough, I told you about the storm that came through, but it gave me more time to check out the area and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So, you know, but it's that type of stuff that I just thrive on or someone will say, well, you know, classmate Joe lives 150 miles over here. And all right, I'm going. I think some of the coolest though are friends of friends. Don Mann.
Yes.
I ended up in a restaurant with her friend in Massachusetts, who she hadn't seen forever. And when I do that, I try to get on the FaceTime. So she gets to be a part of, hey, guess look where I'm sitting having lunch with, you know. But one of the most interesting ones is in Pennsylvania, Kim Thompson, Kim and Brian.
Yep.
She goes, Mark, we befriended these folks years ago. The gentleman, John DeMarco, would bring his the entire hockey team to North Dakota every year to these camps. Started at Grand Forks and ended up morphing into like Fargo, Detroit Lakes and all this. They got to know this couple through the years. They always called him Rocco. They were the only ones that called this guy Rocco. Anyway, next thing you know, she's on the phone with them. And yeah, hey, they want you to come visit.
Right.
You know, and I get there and I come to find out legally, her father, I'll screw up her last name if I even try to say it, but her name is Jennifer. Her father was an attorney in Fargo that was going to be appointed to the Supreme Court right before they put the first woman in there. So he was on there, and the day before he was to be seated or put on the Supreme Court, they changed their mind and said, no, we're going to go with the female.
Oh, that, I know
Yeah.
who the female would have been.
And her name was Jennifer. I'd have to look it up. But it was a bigger surprise because then John, when I'm there, they served me this beautiful crab cake. And it was, you know, they know how to do stuff right. Because he was in that business of being on the docks and marketing seafood products. And so we had this wonderful meal. They have a house that's like built in the 1800s, and it's fantastic. So you have that old fireplace. And then he says, yeah, you know, Jennifer, my wife, the musician, she's recorded much. She's been to Nashville and all this stuff. And so I was asking, you know, what are some of the things? She goes, well, I sang the national anthem at Philly Stadium, was a big one. I sang the seventh inning stretch, God Bless America, at the Philly Stadium. And then she excused herself for a second. Here she comes down the stairs and she's got this acoustic guitar. And I'm looking at it, and he looks at me and he says, I'll bet you she's going to play an original. And she did. And I asked if I could record it, and I shared that, I think, online. Yep. And it was called Cowboy. And it was about her husband. Yeah. And she just, you know, so it's those moments that just, you know, really, is this really happening?
Yeah.
You know, and I'll never forget that.
Well, and here's the thing that I'm hearing in the stories that you're sharing. They'll never forget them either. It's not just for you. It's for the people who you impacted, you know. They had an opportunity to share their house and share their friends and share their food, and you gave that to them as well.
I think humble is a big word. I've been humbled much on this trip. So past perceptions that I've had that have gone away, seeing people in all different circumstances, predicaments, you know, I have nothing to complain about. And I've had the opportunity to interact with many people like who are homeless. And I be honest, I was one of those for years, not in my later years, but earlier, that if you can stand on your feet, you don't need to stand on, you know, I would never give the benefit of doubt, but I've spoken with so many and I've heard these real stories. I mean, when they're telling you, yeah, I spent 7 years in prison because I sold drugs and I paid my price, but now it's tough to get a job or an apartment because I'm a felon and all this stuff, you know. I think the one that touched me the most, though, and we didn't have a big conversation. I was staying in the mountains at about 5,000 feet from Nevada, but I would drive down in the morning for my McDonald's breakfast. And right when I saw it, and I pulled in, I saw this gal, disheveled, dirty clothes, dirty face, sitting under a palm tree right in front of the McDonald's restaurant. It was already 105 degrees. And I'm thinking, but I thought, I'm just going to get her a McMuffin sandwich when I go through here, you know, because I can. And I pulled up and I called her over, and she comes over at 300, you know, that look. And I gave it to her. And of course, I'm not driving up to the mountain, so I pull into the parking lot on the side. And well, I just happened to see her mirror. That thing was going so fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, this woman's hungry. Well, I didn't go back through again, but the next day I came down. And this time I bought her a full meal. But what I remember was she could hardly talk. And you've been such a blessing for me, you know. And it was something simple that I could do. And I thought about this. I said, and since that time, I've never been able to. If I think someone's hungry, I can't go by them. I have to. And you have to kind of balance that a little bit, because I've also given to some that good likelihood that, wasn't going for what
Yeah.
they were requesting. And so, but the way around that is, here, I'll take you out to me. Let's go. I'll meet you over there. Why don't you come sit with me? We'll have a conversation.
So good. Well, we could talk forever. I mean, do you guys have any other questions for Mark that you'd like to hear? I mean, we've been following him. We've been
Yeah.
following him, so we
Keep writing,
yeah,
keep reading.
yeah,
So I do plan a book.
yeah.
Like I said, at the end of it, I don't want it to be a picture book that just sits
Mhm,
on,
mhm.
table. I'm hoping I can write it in such a way that, like I said, if one person would say, because of that,
Mhm.
I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
So motivate, the inspiration. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing. It's dust off your own dreams. It's dust off those aspirations that you set aside years ago and say, gosh darn it, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it. It doesn't have to be grand like this. It could be anything. And you'll have no regrets. That's the most important. In the back of my ride, it says on the very bottom, have no regrets. That's more important than anything else that's on that vehicle, more important than the sticker, the states, and whatever else. And and it's my driver. I don't want to have regrets. If someone says, "Oh, you could have went to this place, or you should have went to," there's 1,000 of those.
Right.
I went where the day led me
Right,
to,
right.
and I got a lot out of it. And some days you just, when you're gone that long, I just want to go where I can find a gravel road and go 10 miles an hour, and just, kind of. It reminds me of North Dakota.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here,
Yes,
being
it's
part of the
fun.
conversation. Thank you for sharing what you've been doing and for your friendship. And thank you, everybody who's listening. And as always, find a way this week to just get real, radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And your life will change.
And I'm
Take it
going
from
to add one last thing.
Yeah.
There's a good possibility that Jody and I are going to be collaborating a bit on this book, because she's an author of 8 books so far. Right around
We're
there.
working on another one.
And
Yep.
she gave me this one when we walked in, just so you see it. But this is so cool. So the first thing I read, it says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. That kind of summarized for me in a nutshell. I feel like I'm alive.
That's
I
awesome.
feel like I've come alive. So this was so fitting to get it.
Coincidence or synchronicity?
Yes.
Hmm.
I'll let you.
Lots of those.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, everybody.